Hello and welcome to episode 213 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Of course, I am your host, Rick Doherty. My guest on the show today will be Mouse and More Adam, who has intense feelings about Muppet Vision 3D being replaced to make way for a Monsters, Inc. land at Disney's Hollywood Studios. This is going to be our topic of discussion today. This will be a long conversation, so I don't want to delay too much. Please do me a favor and like, comment, and subscribe to the Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty YouTube channel. There's a lot happening and there's a lot on the horizon. You will definitely want to be a part of it. Subscribing helps us keep our episodes and videos showing up on your feed. Right now, let's get started with Mouse and More Adam. Thanks for being here, Adam.
Hi, Rick. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
I am doing well. We are here to talk about Muppet Vision 3D, Muppets Courtyard, and really the future of the Muppets at Disney's Hollywood Studios, because there were some big announcements, and I know that you have some very strong opinions on those announcements, and I definitely agree with you for the most part about that. So, first of all, let's talk about Muppet Vision 3D and why it is such an important attraction in Hollywood Studios.
It's a good question. Well, if you're not familiar, it is not a opening day attraction, but it is close. It opened in May of 1991. The park opened in May of 89. So it's 2 years old, or 2 years young from the park. So it's not an original, but it's close enough, right? More importantly, it is the last thing, movie, item, show, whatever you want to call it, that Jim Henson worked on before he passed away. He passed away in May of 1990. They were still in development and filming Muppet Vision 3D when he passed, and the show had to get finished. Some things got changed a little bit after he passed. So it is the last piece of media that he worked on. And unlike a regular movie or a television show that you can rewatch on whatever streaming service or DVD, VHS, whatever you have, Muppet Vision is a theme park attraction, so it includes other elements that you cannot get at home, right? So if you're unfamiliar, it's a spoiler alert, right? It's a 3D movie, and there are, first of all, there's a whole pre-show that has different elements and set pieces and props to look at to entertain yourself. Plus, there's a whole movie going on that is sort of previewing the type of show that you're going to see. And then as you get into the theater, there are practical effects. There is a real Muppet. There are robotic Muppets. And there are water effects, smells, sights, all different things. So it's things that you can't, as of now, with our current technology, you can't replicate that at home. So it is more than just a movie. It's more than just a 3D movie. It's you want to call it a 4D movie, I guess you could. It's like a fourth dimension type thing.
Not something that you could replicate on Disney Plus. Like, they can't just throw this up on Disney Plus and call it a day and say that they're giving us Muppet Vision 3D, because not only would you not get the 3D effects, but the animatronic penguins, the cannons.
Yes,
you get an actual Muppet, a life-size Muppet that is part of this show.
Yes.
And you can't replicate that by just throwing this media onto another platform. It kind of has to be experienced as a theme park attraction.
Yes, there is. And there are YouTube videos of it. I'm not going to promote anybody, but there's one really good one that does a really good job of it. But you can only do, like you said, you can only do so much of just viewing it without experiencing the whole thing. And the part of what makes Muppet Vision so good and what makes the Muppets intellectual property, the Muppets character so good, is how it's lifelike, and the Muppets exist. If you ever watch a Muppet movie, they all exist in the real world as themselves. They are not looked at as puppets or as less than. They are equals with humans. So it's kind of like that it's that way that in the Muppet movies, they are in our world. So we then are sort of like in the same world with them in this show. And that doesn't really, that you can't replicate that on YouTube or Disney Plus or whatever.
Absolutely. And like you said, this was the last project that Jim Henson worked on before he passed. I believe this is the last time he ever had anything to do with a lot of these characters.
Correct. Yeah.
And now that we're losing that, it's not just an opening day attraction. You know, I know a lot of people were upset about losing, for example, the Great Movie Ride. And whatever your feelings are on the Great Movie Ride, it routinely had a 5-10 minute wait. Like, it wasn't drawing crowds, at least towards the end. This show, I find, I do it almost every time I'm in Hollywood Studios, and when I'm there, it's half full almost all day. Like, this is definitely an attraction that people still do experience, and I know a lot of us do it for nostalgia, but I do think there are families who are at Disney for the first time and they do want this intellectual property. They do want to experience the Muppets because it is one of the rare IP in the Disney umbrella where you have characters that do stack up pretty well against like the Fab Five. Like, you have Kermit, who is sort of the stand-in for Mickey. You have, like, these are legendary characters that are every bit as popular among everyday people. Actually, probably the Muppets, even on a practical level, even more than Mickey and Minnie Mouse, because they've been in big movies that have happened more recently. It's an IP that I do think still stands up to this day. And because of the nostalgia that people our age have for them, combined with the fact that kids are still being introduced to them, I think this is one of those rare things that should be Disney's wheelhouse, where it is everything from grandma to grandson.
Yeah, it's definitely an 8 to 80 group of characters. I know you've mentioned how they had a movie more recently than a Mickey Mouse movie, which yes, and we will. And when we get to its replacement, we could bring up how Muppets have been in more in front of more screens than Monsters Inc. characters have too, which is one thing, which is kind of weird to think about, but. And in terms of like a marketability or a merchandising opportunity, because we all know Disney likes to merchandise, the Muppets are plush already. All you got to do is just sell them, and people will buy them, especially the cute ones, right? If I told you the name Kermit, I'm sure most people will say, "Oh, that's the green frog." You know, like that name has become synonymous with what it is. You know, I guess if you told anybody Mickey, what do people think about when you tell them Mickey? Are they thinking of Mouse? Are they thinking of, depending on how old they are, Mickey Mantle? I don't know. You know, but there aren't many Mickeys either. You know, but there's only one Kermit.
Well, one of the things that I talk about a lot is that Disney has Coke products, and I think that's important because I feel like Coke is like the number one brand, the top brand, and Pepsi sort of comes behind. Whatever your personal opinions are on Coke and Pepsi,
Yeah, I get it.
I feel like that's the one that sort of has that Americana vibe. And the Muppets are right there. They're one of those brands like Star Wars, like Mickey Mouse. Kermit is right up there with all of those different brands in recognition throughout society. Like, Kermit is the one Muppet who was also on Sesame Street. So all the kids who grew up watching Sesame Street have a
Yes.
familiarity with Kermit, and I think pretty much everybody has some form or fashion knows Kermit, Miss Piggy, Fozzie, the major Muppet characters, and we'll get to it right now. It's going to be replaced with a Monsters Inc. land based on those movies. And before we even get to comparing Monsters Inc. to the Muppets, I think the worst part of this decision is that we could still have Monsters Inc. without getting rid of the Muppets at Disney's Hollywood Studios, because this is a park that has a lot of dead space.
Yeah.
We talk about is Animation Courtyard, and Animation Courtyard has really nothing going on right now. They say the Little Mermaid show is coming back, and I'll believe that when I see it. And there's Star Wars Launch Bay, which has the meet and greets with Darth Vader and Chewbacca and BB-8. But I have a feeling that they would be able to find some way to incorporate them either over by Star Tours or in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge in some form or fashion. And that's just dead space besides that. It is an area that, like, after 5 o'clock in the afternoon is just a cart selling bubble wands, and that's the only thing going on there. And the fact that they didn't get rid of that area for Monsters Inc. and they decided to eliminate Muppet Vision 3D, which I do think has a lot of history, that was just a bizarre and baffling decision, in my opinion.
If you ever look at a Google map aerial of Hollywood Studios, behind Animation Courtyard is a parking garage, and there is office space back there, which is office space is used for the people that work at the park and whatever. And you need office space for the people that work at the park. I understand that, but in no other park is the office space in the middle of said park. It really doesn't make any sense. And it's really valuable space that they could be using for stuff for us to do. Instead, they decided to keep a parking garage and an office space there, and instead flip and now we're losing Muppet Vision. They are not tearing down, at least according to the concept art, they are not tearing down the Muppet Vision building. They are converting that into something they've said Monsters Inc. show, which is going to make for me a person who is nostalgic about things and others, it's going to be even harder to go into that area and to go into that building, because the building is going to look just like the theater looks like. And I'm assuming it's going to be some kind of screen-based show, right? That's how I would, they're saving money by not using Animation Courtyard, by using this other area, by using Muppets Courtyard area for what they want to do for Monsters. So the fact that they're already saving money already tells me that they're going to want to save more money and make a screen-based show for what they're doing there, because they're going to put a lot of money into the roller coaster that they're building, I'm assuming. So I don't want to. It's not a little gross, but it's going to be like the carcass is still going to be there, and we're now going into another version of whatever it is that we're seeing. And for me personally, I love Monsters Inc. I love those movies. I love Billy Crystal. I think it's hilarious. Him and John Goodman are so good together. But ever since this, I've been turned off to Monsters Inc. I can't watch the movies. I know that there's a show that came out, and I refused to watch season 2 because of all this. And season 2 came out, I think, in this summer, and it's like it just completely turned off these characters for me, because and it's not their fault. They didn't ask for this. Mike Wazowski didn't ask to get rid of. I'm sure Mike Wazowski Billy Crystal has done things with the Muppets. So, and I wonder. I would love to tell Billy Crystal, do you know where they're putting your show? Because he might not even realize it. I don't know.
It is definitely weird, because from the concept art, it appears like this is going to be a facade that stays very, very close to what is there right now. Like, They might be gutting these buildings, but the outside is going to stay very, very similar. And that is going to feel weird when it's a completely different intellectual property, and they're going to try to sell us on some backstory about why everything looks the way it does. But we're all going to know it's because Bob Iger didn't want to completely level the area and build from the ground up again. What is also frustrating when we talk about Animation Courtyard as a location. They're building a roller coaster based on Monsters Inc., and then they're replacing Aerosmith Rock and Roller Coaster with a Muppets roller coaster when it felt like, well, why couldn't you just do the Monsters Inc. roller coaster where Aerosmith is now? And if you want to add something Muppets, you could add it to where it currently would rest. Like, it really feels like they're doing a lot of extra work even to take away from the park, to take away attractions, when you could just very easily build one new roller coaster and have everything make a little bit more sense. But what are your thoughts on this new Muppets roller coaster that's going to be replacing Aerosmith Rock and Roller Coaster?
I am happy that the Muppets will have something once Muppet Vision closes. So I am happy that's happening. If I had to lose Muppet Vision, gain a ride, I would be like, okay. I just wish it was a ride that everybody or most people could do. And I think that's, and we talked about this before, fair. The problem with, and I hate to sound like I'm like not happy about this, but the problem with having the Muppets not in this intense roller coaster is that the ride is short. I mean, it's like a 2-minute ride, and you're not going to have much time with them anyway. I mean, Muppet Vision, the with the pre-show and the show itself, it's 15-20 minutes. Now we're going to like a 2-minute presentation here, and you're going 60 miles an hour through a dark building. So you're not going to have much face time with Muppets. Also, not everybody's going to be able to do it. First of all, there's a height requirement. So however tall you are, that's how you will be able to get on. And not everybody likes roller coasters. Not everybody can do roller coasters. You can't do it if you have a heart condition. You can't do it if you're pregnant. You can't, if you can't step down into the, if you have a mobility issue and you can't step down into the car to get in and get yourself out, you can't ride it either. So there's a lot of limitations for this ride that the 3D show has none of. Anybody can go to the 3D show, unless if you don't like 3D movies, which fine. But the amount of people that can't do 3D versus the amount of people that can't do roller coasters, you can't even compare the two. So I mean, am I glad that the Muppets are staying? Yes. Do I wish it was a slower ride that more people do? Yes. But like you said, it's just like they could have just put the Monsters Inc. there, made that whole area Monsters Inc. They could have done what they're doing now and kept Muppets where they were and then kept Monsters where they were. So it's kind of like they added an extra step for reasons I don't know why.
And I often try to think, what is the thought process for Disney, right? Like, they're looking at data that we don't have, and they're looking at information that we don't know. Is their data telling them that Muppets are exclusively a nostalgia property now? Are they under the impression that it's basically, people like Adam, people like me, who remember the Muppets from their childhood, who are into them? Because I don't think that's the case. Every time I'm in Muppet Vision 3D, there's a ton of kids there. When they used to do the American History show in Liberty Square at Magic Kingdom, it was always the kids that would go crazy for that show. So I don't think Muppets is just a nostalgia property for adults. And because of that, I don't like limiting it to a roller coaster that is going to deter a lot of older people. When you say 8 to 80, like, that 70-year-old age, like they stop going roller coasters after a little bit, and until you hit that height requirement. And even if you do hit the height requirement, there are a lot of kids who aren't ready for a roller coaster right when they hit that level. It takes a while for them to, do the progression. If you've done Barnstormer and then you do Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, like, you work your way up to Aerosmith Rock and Roller Coaster. That's not baby's first roller coaster, right? It is.
Yeah, it goes upside down. If you didn't know that, If you're
Right.
listening, you know that it goes upside down. It goes upside down like I think 3 times, and there's a launch that launches you at like 60 miles an hour, which doesn't mean anything if you're going fast either way. So if you're not used to that, then you get used to it because you're going to have to if you want to ride it.
It's definitely thrill wise above Big Thunder, above Barnstormer, certainly above Seven Dwarfs. Like, this is that next level of roller coaster up there with Everest and Space Mountain. I would say it's probably even a level above Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind.
Yeah, I think because it goes upside down, absolutely.
I think there are a lot of reasons why I don't like this being the Muppets representation. Now, it might be fun to incorporate some different songs, to incorporate some different musical artists besides just Aerosmith, which, when you combine maybe some of the problematic things we've learned over the past couple years, and then when you just start to think that Aerosmith hasn't had a hit in quite a few years as well, maybe not relying so much on a band that peaked in the 70s and had some resurgence in the 90s is a good idea, but I just don't know with attaching it to the Muppets, who, are supposed to be for everyone. However, they are getting ready for this villain show that is going to be replacing the Lightning McQueen Racing Academy, which is in that back corner, sort of tucked behind what is now Aerosmith Rock and Roller Coaster and right by the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. I wonder, do you think it's possible, once Monsters Inc. is doing its thing, and once we've had the Muppets showing people that they are an IP that still deserves to be in the parks with this roller coaster, do you think it's possible that Muppet Vision 3D could come back and replace that villain show, which I believe is just a precursor for Villains Land over at Magic Kingdom? Do you think we might get Muppet Vision 3D back in that corner?
I hope we do. I hope we do. Logically, it makes sense. I mean, they're going to have this villain show, and you would think when they open this Villains Land they're building in Magic Kingdom in 5-6 years, assuming everything goes well with the economy and everything, I would think they're going to not have the villains there and leave them there. You would think. However, Disney does have no problem of having the same property in multiple parks. You got Beauty and the Beast show at Hollywood Studios. You have their video thing in Epcot, which is kind of weird. It's such a weird thing that they do there. And then you have the restaurant in Magic Kingdom. You got Beauty and the Beast in 3 different places. You've got Frozen in Epcot, the ride, and then you got Frozen show in Hollywood Studios. So they have no problem. And then you have Star Wars in 3 places in 1 park. So they have no problem duplicating properties in different areas. So would I think that villains would leave? Yes. Will they? I don't know. With the Muppet Vision is the show, but it's also all the other stuff. And I just hope and pray that there is somebody in Imagineering that is going to be there for a while, who is taking notes and making sure, okay, this is here, this is here, this is here. Because when we go and replicate it in another theater, everything goes back to where it's supposed to be. And the fact that there's just so many extra elements and things, I don't know if they're going to, I hope they're taking the time to really make sure everything gets stored correctly, or that they're going to spend the money and make new robots and such. I really do. But I don't know. I just have to hope, because there's certain things that just they do that just don't make any sense. And this whole Muppets Monsters thing didn't make any sense to me, and yet they're still doing it. So I don't know. I mean, it's a perfect spot. If they're not going to have Muppet Vision where it is now, it's a good spot for it, because it's going to be next to the ride that they'll have. It is a courtyard. They could put a fountain there. They could put a merchandise thing there. They could put they could put so much things there. There's space there, and it's kind of in its own little corner. Nobody's going to touch it. It's not near Galaxy's Edge, so it's not like that's going to swallow it up at some point. They're not going to do a Twilight Zone something next to Tower Terror. They'll never do that. They could, they should. They'll never do that. It's a good spot for it. I'm hopeful that will happen, especially given what they said in their press release, I don't know how the words correctly, but they said something to the effect of, we're taking steps to preserve it and whatever. And what Jim Henson Company said, how they're looking forward to Muppet Vision's next step or next ride. They said something to the effect. It seemed like implied that they knew that something is going to happen to Muppet Vision at some point in the future.
I think the time that I got scared about the future of Muppet Vision, because I was always pretty confident, except for there's always like that one thing that's sort of like itching your brain, like this doesn't feel right. When they reopened from the pandemic and they never reopened the Muppets store.
Yeah.
In Muppets Courtyard. That was the thing that kind of said to me, if Disney doesn't want to make money off this property right now, it's in trouble. And when you combine never reopening the store and the fact that I feel Mama Melrose, which is a sit-down restaurant that's in the Muppets section, but is really tucked back in a corner, that if you didn't know it was there, if you weren't looking for Mama Melrose, like you wouldn't even know it was there. Yeah. So that restaurant was half full a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And Disney does not like to waste space on restaurants that aren't at full capacity. So that was another thing that kind of scared me. But that was more the location of the restaurant, where they built the entrance. Like, I didn't feel that was anything to do with the food. The food there was fine.
Yeah.
The theming was fine. It's just they sort of tucked it back. Really, as you were exiting Muppet Vision 3D was the only time that you would see that restaurant, or if you were visiting the store. And since they never reopened the store, I think that hurt the demand for the restaurant. So I think those things, combined with the suspect pizza at Pizza Rizzo, Disney felt, well, we can put a new facade on this, maybe change up the restaurants a little bit, and then there will be demand. Now, maybe it will work, but I would advise them on Woody's Barbecue or whatever it's called in Toy Story Land, because when that first opened, it was one of the hardest reservations to get on property. But about 2 months later, I bet you could go on right now, open your My Disney Experience app, and make a reservation for tomorrow every 15 minutes. So a lot of these things, they think, oh, we'll plaster a popular IP on it, and it will all of a sudden become the new incarnation of Be Our Guest. But that doesn't always happen. And I'm worried that they're going to make these changes, the Monsters, Inc. changes, and maybe they don't have the big splash that they intended. And then any chance of them spending that money windfall on Muppet Vision 3D coming back at another end of the park becomes less and less likely.
And them doing something with Animation Courtyard. Because if they are saving Animation Courtyard for something big, there is no guarantee that will ever happen. Because, I mean, like, things change. Economic things change. Popularity of something changes. So they might have a grand plan for, these are just me spitballing here. They might have a grand plan for Zootopia, because there's a Zootopia 2 movie coming out. So they might have an idea for a Zootopia land there. They might have an idea for a Simpsons land there, which is another, at that point, will be a 40-year-old property, right? They might have grand plans for I mean, that's sort of next to Toy Story Land. So they might have grand plans for like expanding Toy Story Land out that direction. Like, and there's another Toy Story movie coming out. But if that doesn't hit well, who knows, right? It's all about like what movie does well, and which is why like this Monsters Inc. thing is so interesting, because the sequel came out and I think 2011, it wasn't a sequel, it was a prequel, 2011, 2012, something like that. And then they have this show on Disney Plus, which I don't think is popular. It's good, but although like I said before, I haven't seen a second season. But I don't think it's like moving any needles or anything. It's not a Moana or Encanto. Who knows? Maybe they're going to build Encanto Land over there, although they're doing that in Animal Kingdom. My point is, they're saving that area for something, and they might not do anything with it. I have some hope that Muppet Vision will return in some form at Hollywood Studios, but unfortunately, there's a lot of factors that are beyond my control and anybody's control. And I'm assuming whoever even wrote that blog post won't be there in the next 3 years or 5 years, when they might be able to put it back, and it's out of their control too. So I don't know. I guess I'm glad that and you are too, that we lived in an era where we were able to experience it, in its true form. So I'm thankful for that, at least.
And just quickly before we go, why do you think, as somebody who is such a big Muppets fan, why do you think this is an important intellectual property to continue on to the next generation? What do you think are the benefits of having the Muppets in a theme park, in an attraction that is accessible to the widest amount of people?
That's a good question, and I think it comes back to just the type of characters that they are, and how they are relatable to people, and yet they don't look like us. You can't put them in a category as a person, okay? They look weird, and that's okay. And if you're a young kid and maybe you're having trouble making friends or something, you can find a Muppet character. I mean, it happens with Sesame Street, and Sesame Street are Muppets, right? You can find a character that you can relate to that is your personality type. Maybe you're more of a crazy person like Gonzo. Maybe you're more of a prima donna like Miss Piggy. Maybe you're more of a free, sort of flowy thinker like Janice from the band Electric Mayhem. Maybe you're like the straight-laced guy like Kermit. And you can find any character to sort of relate to, and it's just they don't judge. Muppets, they don't judge each other whenever you're watching them in a show or on a movie. They're funny with each other and make fun of each other, but they don't criticize each other. They don't judge each other. Except, of course, obviously the two guys, Statler, Waldorf, but that's part of their shtick. I mean, they're the cranky old men. They're allowed to do that. But it's a really inclusive base of characters that anybody can find somebody to latch onto and enjoy with.
I think one of the things that I like about the Muppets being in a Disney park is you have a character like Mickey Mouse, who started off in Steamboat Willie, and he was mischievous and everything, and he caused problems. But over the 90 years, his persona turned into this different thing. It was slick. It was, polished. It was, it all started with a mouse. It was a character that became the face of this huge corporation.
Yeah.
And he kind of lost that mischievous edge. He became perfect. He became the big cheese.
Yes.
The Muppets will never be perfect. The Muppets are always making mistakes. Their best laid plans are never going to come into fruition. And that's something that's important for kids to learn. Not everything is going to be perfect. Sometimes you're going to try to put on the show and everything is going to go wrong, and you just laugh with your friends about it, because what are you going to do at the end of the day, right?
Yep.
And I think it really does fit as a nice counter to that perfect Mickey Mouse image that has been created throughout the years. So that's why I like the Muppets being there. Adam, this was such a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Rick. Appreciate it.
What are your thoughts on Muppet Vision 3D being replaced at Hollywood studios? Are we making too big of a deal out of this? Is all change in the parks a good thing? Let us know in the comments. We want to hear from you because this is a community. Coming up next week, my co-host Maz will be here for the first of 2 episodes where we do one of our famous tier lists. We're going to rank our favorite and berate our least favorite pre-shows at Walt Disney World. We have surprisingly strong opinions on this topic. That will be next Thursday on Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Until then, have a great week.